I am from the Dominican Republic, Santo Domingo.
I am from Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, so I'm Dominican. I was born in the capital, Santo Domingo.
Yes.
But my parents are from Villa Jaragua. It's a small town in the Dominican Republic on the southeast of the Dominican Republic. And
Specifically.
I am from Santo Domingo, the capital. It's called Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. We lived in a place with my mom and dad, and we were younger. That was by, they called it, I don't know exactly how they call that.
So who did you live there with?
it was like a neighbor, a neighbor.
And who did you live there with?
Well, when I was
It
born,
was called San Carlos. It was like by San Carlos.
San Carlos?
That's the name that I remember.
Okay. And you lived there with both of your parents?
With my mother and my father.
And your brother,
My
right?
brothers. And also I remember that my grandmother used to live with us.
Oh, okay.
Then my mother and my father separated. No, they were going to separate. And my mother decided to come to the United States because she was invited by a friend of hers that worked with her at the hospital where she worked. It was called Santo Domingo. It was an aviation hospital. And my mother was a nurse there, and her friend was a nurse also. And I remember the lady's name, Juanita. She was married to one of Trujillo's sons.
And Trujillo exactly, do you remember who Trujillo is?
he was a dictator.
He was the president of Santo Domingo, and he was a dictator. So my mother was friends with this lady, and who was married to one of Trujillo's sons, and she was able to get a visa to come to the United States legally. And from there, she was able to get her alien card. So when she decided to live here in the United States, she was a legal resident.
Well, first, when I was born, my father and my mother, they were still together. So then around the age of, I think probably, 6 or 7, my mother came here. They separated. And then I stayed there living with my father and my grandmother and my sister, my older sister Lucita, my younger brother at that time, Juan. And we lived in the capital, Santo Domingo, for a year or something. And then we went to El Campo, which is the countryside over there, to Villa Jaragua. It's a small town in the Dominican Republic.
And how was it living there?
Well, it was kind of, it was bittersweet. Let's put it that way, because my mother was here. I didn't have my parents, even though my father was living in the Dominican Republic. He was a police officer, so he was stationed in another town.
So you were separated
so
from him.
I was just living with relatives that I didn't know. We had just met, and when we went over there, excuse me, we had just left school that particular day. I think it was probably around June of 1969, and my father just said, "Hey, hop on that bus over there. Get on that bus. We're going to the Villa Jaragua. We're going to spend a couple of days there." Probably, I don't know, I thought we were going to spend probably the weekend, 3 days. 3 days turned into 3 years.
Wow.
And living there was like living back in the 1800s, because they had no electricity, no running water. A lot of those people, some of those kids, they had never seen a car in their life. They didn't call automobiles, they didn't call cars, they used to call them machine, that was a machine, And it was very, when we learned, I mean, you know, everything that we had taken for granted, it wasn't there. We didn't have we didn't have any TVs, nothing, zero. We only had a small radio with batteries, and it was really it was quite an experience. So it was almost like living probably the United States back in the 1800s. You know, a lot of people, they didn't even know the concept of TV.
The Amish country. When we lived with my mother and my father, to us it was normal. It was nice because they were working. They had good jobs then, and I remember having the things that our family we were not poor, but we were not rich either.
Middle class. So your family was middle class. You lived
Then
pretty comfortably
when my mother and my father were together. But I remember that when my mother came, we were, I was about, I think I was 4, turning 5.
And what did you do out there in the Dominican Republic?
We were taking to my aunt's house, you know, to visit. And when we got there, someone told us that my mom had left to New York. And to me, the word New York was like, where is that? You know, it was something like going to where? To the moon? And when we turned back to the capital, to Santo Domingo, everybody started telling us that actually she was gone. She was in the United States, in New York. After my mom left, after I found out that she was here, I was like so attached to my grandmother that my life was being with my grandmother.
So you didn't really mind that she was here?
So I did, because I missed her, because I was living in my aunt's house.
And how old were you when your mother left?
Huh?
How old were you when your mother left and she came here?
I was turning 5.
Oh, okay.
In fact, there's a picture there when I turned 5 and my mom was gone. I was a very sad little girl because my mom left us to
She
come to
started
New York.
smoking and drinking.
Don't say that, Moses. Well, anyway, I stayed with my grandma, living in my aunt's house with other kids. It was like, oh my God. Mercedes, Bene, Maria, and Tania.
We used to have fun playing, running around with the other kids. You know, since we didn't have a TV or anything, we were very creative. We'll go play baseball, and we'll come up with a lot of little, you know, kids games. And running around, we used to do a lot of running around. We would go to the canal or the river that we used to call Cachon and swim over there. That's where I learned how to swim, all on my own, baby. My mother wanted us to be back with her, and then my father was living there. We were living with him, and he wouldn't give permission for us to leave. So, you know, somehow they convinced him, and he signed, I guess, the papers or whatever, and then we went to the American embassy and we got our papers, and we came here on January 17th, 1976. It was a very cold day. So, but we felt sad because we were leaving my father there, and we had a little sister too, on his, you know, a half sister, you know, Ollie. So, but we were glad that we were coming also to be with our mother.
So
So it
you
was like
left your younger sister behind, and that made you feel bad?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very close, we were good friends, but he was after me. He used to chase me everywhere. We used to go to a health spot, and he would go over there and even announce me over the loudspeaker, and I would be exercising that just to say that he was there to pick me
Moses
up.
has arrived.
Yeah. And I used to be so embarrassed. It was Jacqueline then. And Elena would be so happy because she didn't have to take the train back.